Steve Hartung.
Jim Bailey.
Cheryl Prescott.
Larry Baker.
Jim Riggs.
Elby Gray Jackson, Assembly Member.
Adam Trombley.
Bill Starr.
Paul Holman, Assembly.
Bill Webb.
Okay, and Andy should be here. I saw him looking through the parking lot looking for a parking spot. So, real quick, just wanted to mention that at our last, approval of minutes actually. Anybody see any problems with those?
And they're attached to the agenda.
Move for approval. Second. Tony Kane just walked in. Okay.
Who second?
One of us. Sure.
Minutes approved.
I'm just trying to take minutes.
Real quick, from our last meeting, the plan was to choose 2 or 3 departments that you wanted to do an analysis on, meet with department heads. And I have a form here, and Heather emailed me what hers are because she couldn't be here. And so what I'll do is, at some time during the meeting, if you could just pass me forward what you guys wanted to do the analysis on, and I'll fill out the form. That way I can get everybody into groups and send that email out today as far as who's going to be working with who on what departments. And since we're limited on time, we'll go ahead and move towards, Bill, do you want to go first?
No, just to expand on that committee discussion, we're actually having an overlap committee meeting. That's why you see some assembly members here as well. Assembly Budget and Finance Committee meeting is conjunctive with this one for a couple of reasons. One is to facilitate that process of departmental reviews. And I want to just I can spend time now or we can do it later. Adam's got a sign-up sheet going around. What you'll need to probably do if we want to make this work equitably is the concept was dividing the in-depth budget departmental reviews into small pieces and groups of 3 or 4. If you go for 3 groups, that would be helpful. So you'll need to sign up for basically 3 areas of interest if you would do that. There's 26 departments to review, so we'll need basically 26 separate subcommittees, and if we have 9 plus us breaking into groups. So if you could entertain the idea of maybe having in-depth departmental reviews for 3 with summary reports on that would be helpful. Break the overall concept. As you see, the budget book's 4 inches thick. What I've facilitated is breaking down the departmental packets into the small pieces of that, as well as providing some additional information. One of the information pieces that's in here is the personnel costing reports. And the personnel costing reports are a detailed breakdown by name, by position number. In this case, they're broken down by department. So that's not confidential information necessarily. It doesn't need to be broadcast as possible. But I give you that as an illustration of the administration's commitment and support, as well as the encouragement on the depth. When you're talking real name and real people, in here, first department so happens to be assembly members. You can see my name's on here. I get a stipend check as well as we have various other types of expenses related to the assembly. The assembly budget, the in-depth discussions that would go with that, basically you're unfettered. I just met with the mayor again. It's carte blanche to ask those questions that are important to the process of reviewing the spending plan. So what I would encourage is that you break in your subcommittees and really come up with definitive, in-depth areas that you're challenged by, whether it be the proposed cuts to the police department. We've got transit cuts going on. We've got increased fees and fines. We've got a couple other aspects of the budget process that are very, very important. So I'm not going to go too deep into that, but try to pick 3 areas of that. The idea too that we'll support you with assembly personnel. There are 6. We've added Patrick Flynn to our committee for the purposes of having 6 resources to go to. Ultimately, the assembly members themselves will have to make modifications or adjustments through amendment processes. The BAC, at last count, can't make direct amendments to the budget, but they can suggest to that. So as your liaison with your assembly members assigned to the departments, that's their role, as well as to facilitate the discussions therein. But carte blanche, and that means basically no topic with the department heads is off limits. And if you have challenges getting to them, let Adam or myself know, and we'll facilitate the meetings. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you be a little more explicit in terms of who's on the budget and finance committee besides the three of us? Because I didn't know that there were more folks at it, and I also want to know who's assigned to me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we haven't made the assignments per se yet, but I've asked Patrick Flynn to join the other group of designated as 5 for an ad hoc support. Maybe not a formal introduction to the committee yet, but resources that would provide that. You know, my feeling is the more people that we have that are vested in the process to review the public's spending plan, the better. The committee consists of Jennifer, yourself, Paul Honeman, Ernie Hall, myself, and again with Patrick, brings it up to 6 assembly members committed to that, 5 on the formal committee. I serve as chair, of course, and then we'll have Patrick as an ad hoc support to that, so that
Thank you, Mr.
we
Chair.
can break the work teams up. Adam's got his groups. Once the subcommittees are formed, I think we ought to decide just where it's at. But the same thing that would go there is that each assembly member would probably need to take on 3 or 4 various areas of interest, or just by assignments, and help facilitate that discussion. And I'm almost done. My expectation would be a white paper summary of a sort of an in-depth discussion, maybe summarize the questions that you had with the departments, the department heads, as well as various adjunct areas of interest. I've been asked by the Aircraft Owners Association, the Alaska Airmen's Association, to speak to the aircraft tax increase. So there may be requests from other user groups and vested interest parties that we'll have to entertain discussions. I know Ernie's meeting with 5 community councils, so they'll have input, and maybe that makes part of your work paper. Work paper is a formal understanding of what you guys talked about, maybe recommendations and suggestions by department. That's really the end product I'd like to see. And if we could do that in 5 weeks, maybe your next meeting, I think is November 3rd, Adam.
Yeah, that was the goal, is to have all the department meetings done in 5 weeks.
And hopefully that's enough time if we get at it. Assign committees today. I'll facilitate the assembly liaisons, and then you start making direct contact with the department heads or the department leaders, and let's get some work done. That's all I have. Thank you.
The other goal was that, in the past, what the Budget Advisory Commission had normally done is just either made a blanket statement, either we approve, or we either like the budget or we don't like the budget. But what I had in mind, and hopefully the group will approve of this, is that we'll take department by department and we'll submit that to the assembly, saying this is how the BAC and this subcommittee feels about department X, Y, and Z. And so it's not just going to be a blanket yes or no to the budget, because obviously the budget is far more complex than just saying yes or no to it. So that was my goal, and hopefully we can discuss that through emails and telephone calls as to whether or not we agree with that route.
Mr. Baker, Chief of Staff here, are we on course with the commitment from the administration to give us that unfettered access? And I mean,
Absolutely.
I just don't need any
I think
runaround
you know,
here.
and that's part of the public process, and or you're engaged, and rather than look at the 30,000 point of view, we have absolutely no problem whatsoever. My only suggestion to you and to Adam as the BAC looks forward is that, you know, there's more than just the budget. You need to also look at the 6-year plan. And as Albie knows, and Bill, you know, and those of you that have been around a while, you know, you need to look into the future. You just can't look today. And as you'll see in the 6-year plan, they're projected in 2012 is with some slight increase in revenues, there still is a $10 million gap in 2012. And that also reaches an assumption that perhaps there may be some additional revenue from tobacco tax or whatever. If that does not pass, well then, obviously then the gap will grow accordingly. So as you look at it and as you study it, I think you need to keep that in mind, because, you know, last year we reduced the budget by 195 positions. This year there's a recommended $110 million reduction.
110 positions.
110 positions, sorry, not employees, 110 positions.
Not 110 million.
195 positions last year, there was a reduction. This year, there's a recommended 110 position reduction in order to plug that gap. If you look forward into 2012, that's another $10 million, and that if you you can apply the math. And so that, so I think that you really need to keep that as you look at the departments and you move forward. Not do it just within a narrow framework, even though that's your mission for this year, but you really need to think about where we're going into the future. So,
I appreciate the advice, and again, that's sort of how you approach the department heads, as you ask the questions, obviously they've got a budget spending plan this year. I think it's a fair question of what do they see coming, or what are they doing to be prepared for the future. That's probably best fiscal health as it relates to that. And the 6-year plan is in the budget book
yes.
this year, so you have the full package. If you look at your agenda, which Adam put out, for 4A and B, we're flopping back and forth a little bit on the schedule for that. And again, the overall suggestion is that however we can best come together, a group of 15 or 16 folks. We've got clerical staff supported from the clerk's office, so there's meeting rooms downstairs on the first floor. By all means, use those assets and those resources to get at the course of business. Go to the department offices, do what you think is normal course of this task at hand, and I'd like to see something back as a formal presentation to this assembly request sometime in 5 weeks, if we can pull it together. It'll start getting, we'll have had one formal work session at the assembly level on October 22nd, but this is really for me where it's at. The work teams, the work plan as it is this is where the work's getting done. So hopefully we can do that. The assembly members are here. We're going to hear what Cheryl's going to say. Basically, she told us the same thing on Friday with some of you. So if you feel like you have something to add to what I just said, I'd like sort of our committee to speak up now, and then we can just be off the agenda for the rest of the meeting. Turn it loose to the administration and Adam's group. You guys have anything you wanted to formally address?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment. I think the approach is really good. So thank you for bringing this approach forward. I'm looking forward to working with whoever's assigned to me.
Yeah, good. And Elvie brings a tremendous amount of how many budgets besides when you work for the administration? Is this your
I
third?
never worked for the administration.
Well, I'm sorry, at the,
Since I've been involved in budgets probably for
Yeah.
26 years.
yeah, so she's
Or
a
more.
tremendous go-to person, and that's the reason that the assembly is here, is that, we're not going to try to influence your opinions of what you're finding and what you're seeing and what you're asking, but to facilitate the discussion through Elvie's talents, and she's clearly a go-to person that you'd want to pick up the phone and
4
say-
years with transit, though. Excuse me, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
and then on the
And
assembly
then-
level, Paul said it best the other day, it's his first day at the rodeo, but he brings talents to the process. Jennifer's previous chair of this committee. Go ahead.
I just wanted to echo what Larry was saying as far as the 6-year fiscal plan, and as you're looking at this, the administration did change the fiscal plan, their vision from last year to this year. And last year, what they were looking at doing this year was doing $25 million in cuts and raising taxes 3%. So it was doing the poison pill all at once. What they're looking at doing now over the 6 years is spreading that out over the next 4 years. And I think you need, as you're looking at departments, I think you need to keep this in mind, because we haven't taken care of the problem. The problem's still there. It's going to be coming back to haunt us every year if we continue in this way. And is this the right approach, or is this, as you're looking at departments, you feel comfortable with it?
Paul, you got anything?
Well, I'm just looking forward to the process more than anything. I'm not convinced that, if we go and, to me, going to the departments and asking them how they see their department over the next 4 to 6 years, obviously, they've read the book from the mayor's office, and their budget's gonna reflect pretty much in keeping in standard with that. So I'd like to be able to ask the real questions and know that I'm gonna get an answer, certainly from department head. If I ask, you're taking projected cuts of 3 positions, just hypothetical, 3 positions at health department, what impact does that have for delivery of services to our community? And frankly, that's what my number one goal is concerned with is, we can say we deliver some services. Does that mean we're going to deliver adequate services or competent and fully capable services? Because frankly, we're asking yet again our taxpayers, our homeowners, and I'm one of them, to pay a little more, and we're going to get a little less. And yet we're leaving money on the table, and there's certainly some adjustments that I think could be made. So I'm going to be looking and approaching this from perhaps maybe a different view. I'm not taking the Bible and verse from the 6-year fiscal plan. Sorry, I'm not. I don't agree with it. So I'm gonna take that under advisement, but I'm also gonna look at it from a realistic, let's deliver the services, the very best services we can get for our money. And if that means we've got to add a position or two back and cut somewhere else, I'm willing to have that dialogue and that discussion. But I want to look under the hood, I want to kick the tires, as I've always done just about everything I've done in life.
And that's a fair approach. I hope that you're not gonna get scripted answers from the department heads, and I think you'll find that you won't. You know, and I'm not saying you,
I'm really, I hope I'm wrong.
Well,
I'm
and
really
dig-
concerned that's what I'm gonna get.
dig in deep, you know, again,
Okay.
we're trying to, or I'm trying to provide the level of detail and level of support that is at mission function. There's new quantifiable standards that are in the budget book, and Cheryl will speak to that as what they're actually gonna provide as a level of quantifiable measure, response times, or how quick they answer the phone, or whatever their area measure is. That's gonna be a new element to it as well. And then, you know, the illustration, it's not to wow you with the level of detail, but, you know, the personnel costing reports are in here in these 26 packets distributed to you folks for a reason, and that's because, you know, you really got to get into the weeds, you got to get into the details, as opposed to the global speak that Adam said, is that I don't need just a general, yeah, it's good, or no, it's not going to work. We've got to know what you like about it. Hey, Patrick, come on over.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And Paul, this is my mistake, I should have mentioned this earlier, is that along with deciding what committees we wanted to be on, is we were gonna come up with a list of questions, and like, for example, like what you're talking about, you know, digging in there. And Heather has some good questions here. Some of the questions she wants to propose is, you know, what are some of the unmet needs of the department? What response from the public do you anticipate regarding the proposed cuts? So it's not just gonna be, do you like the budget? Yes, no, check that box. It's gonna be, how do you personally feel about this? Like, are you gonna be able to operate your department under these new limitations?
Well,
So-
in response, fair, that's a good statement. I really hope the whole process goes that way. And I know 5 weeks is gonna be a rather short period of time to do it. I think the administration's been working on building a budget since when, Gerald, about June or July?
September.
I mean, the departments have been working on their end probably since June or July. August, okay. Well, they get a couple of months ahead of us then to get into it, and hopefully in 5 weeks, we can kind of look and see. And I'm not saying let's recreate a wheel. I mean, goodness gracious, we got a great working set of documents here, and I got no problem with it. Familiar with the process of a department working on a budget, but I am really, I do like, I guess, the way it had been done in the past, where they have service functions line by line, and so you get to a certain dollar amount, and you say, okay, this budget represents everything above this line. Anything below the line is things we could do if we had more money, or if you change your priorities and remove something and added something. And so without, for the knowledge of people that may or may not have gone through this from the department level, that was very helpful for when we had to build, because we knew what we had. It was a bright line. It was literally a bright line. You knew what was going to be paid for out of the money.
Yeah, and that's an important part, is that the assembly technically appropriates by department. And so what we actually do is say, you know, here's the money to run DHSS and the appropriation of the action that we take at the budget level. You know, if they decide to run this sort of clinic or hand out that sort of public information piece, that's up to the executive branch and the leadership of that department. So, you know, Paul's right, is that there's a little bit of faith going on here that we get what we appropriate. With his system, it was a little bit, the system that he analyzed, it was a little bit more black and white in terms of that. But, you know, we'll get through it. I think the emphasis that I've done it now a bunch here is to get into the weeds, get into those hard discussions with those department heads. And if it doesn't appear like it's going, or you're getting pulled back answers, or I'm sorry, I can't talk about that, then come to Adam or myself and we'll get to you the answers. There shouldn't be a topic that's off limits. If you get scripted answers, we've got to know, you're advising the assembly, and to a certain degree, you're advising the administration. You know, the having it done in 5 weeks, you know, that's because your next meeting is November 3rd. If we need a little bit of latitude, that's great, but I want to be able to take these opinions out of committee and start to address the overall budget, and we just don't have a ton of time between now and December 7th. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we don't have a lot of time even today.
Yeah.
But just one really quick question so we can move on. What's in that packet for each department? What is there?
What's in here right now is we took the budget book apart,
Okay,
and so there's every tab that you have in the master book broken down by departments, and there's the personnel costing reports that summarize the labor cost by position,
okay,
by name and PCN number.
so in each folder is personnel costs and that's it?
So far, yeah.
Okay,
If
so
they,
far.
if they need other things, we'll get them.
Okay, just curious. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, you
Chairman.
bet. That's all I have.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
I just,
sorry.
I kind of feel
that I need to defend the honor of this administration. This suggestion that department directors will be scripted or told what not to say,
Okay.
I think is not fair.
Yeah.
And maybe have been practiced previously, but we won't tell department directors what to say or not say.
The mayor said that to me 10 minutes ago,
Okay,
so.
and
I-
so I really, take exception to the suggestion that we would do otherwise.
Well, we'll just try to provide that unfettered access to the information that's important for the decision making. If it's just digging for the sake of digging, great. If you got something that you want to address at a committee level, bring it in. Yeah, Helen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I promise this is my last
No,
comment.
it's okay, it's open
Thank you,
forum.
Ms. Praska, for your comments. And I'm not defending anybody, but being around for as long as I've been around, departments were scripted what to say, and a lot of them were not even allowed to talk to assembly members in any depth.
I've
So
been-
that's
I've
a
been-
fact,
This
you know.
administration,
And
I've
I'm
been
so,
told, I'm sorry,
excuse
go
me, Mr. Holman,
I'm sorry.
and I'm really glad to hear that this administration is not gonna follow that history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I understood in the past that the assembly approves the maximum amount of the school district budget. I don't know where they are in their budget cycle, but are you interested in hearing from the BAC about anything about the school district budget?
Yes, not today, but
Yeah.
we'll have a forum in that Jennifer's on the committee. Personally, she's suggested a assembly resolution for discussion, and that'll be in front of us next Tuesday. What I think we'll probably see your initial comments and your request for that would be to bring her resolution, spending directive, if you will, back into our committee and then research out to your resources. I'm still frustrated a little bit because there's a mechanism like the BAC. What do you guys formally call it? The School Budget Advisory Committee. It's a little bit short-staffed and not conjunctive, so we'll probably put this group, the BAC, into the mix in some capacity. So that's the answer there, and you can
My
expect that in the next
understanding
couple
was
weeks.
Past years, it's been a rather high-level review.
Yeah, their fiscal year is 6 months off from ours, and so their budget building process will get really cranked up probably mid-November, about the time we slow down in this one. We'll task you with that probably, so that's a quick answer. I'm done, you done? I mean, it's your meeting.
No, I appreciate it. Cheryl, Paul, you had something to say, didn't you?
No, I pretty much, I just said during this time period, as recent as about a month or so ago, in trying to address department heads, I've been told that I'd have to, basically, they self-report, they have to go back and let you know. It doesn't make for a good, meaningful dialogue between two adults, and particularly two different branches. I understand what the administration's stance on certain things is. Sometimes I want to know, like I said, I want to open the hood and pull the dipstick out myself. If you're going to drive a car for a little while, you pretty much need to help make sure it doesn't fall apart on you.
Yeah,
And-
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Sure.
when we're developing the budget, because a decision one day or a tentative decision one day could change the next day, depending on receipt of more information from the mayor, departments do not provide information about the budget because it is in progress. But once it's released, once it's proposed, it's public information. So that may have been some of the, you may have gotten, while we're developing the budget. So-
Yeah, and then there's no really guide rules to it other than there's no rules off limits, but try to coordinate your meetings so that you collectively move together as a subcommittee. It's fair to the process, that there are groups of 3 or 4 would best do that. And it doesn't mean that you just have to meet with the department head. It could be employee groups, it could be another type of meeting that you want to facilitate as it relates to the 26 departments. But at the end of the day, we need to make a spending decision as it relates to Public Works and PM&E and then what you guys say as it relates to subcommittee work. I think it'll be really valuable if you go at it that way and in a political manner, hopefully, that we don't come at it with a prejudice. So that's my spiel. Thanks for doing what you do. It is valuable, and my commitment to the last meeting, as I addressed you folks, was to give you real work and real expectations that you're making a difference, and how you turn your suggestions into budget changes, budget amendments. Again, you liaisoning with the assembly decision makers is that. In this case, you've got 6 of them committed to this process, and work forums that are informal, and in this case, hopefully productive.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Cheryl, you wanted to go over the budget?
Yeah, well, I don't know, because we're gonna review information that was at the work session last Friday, so I suspect some of you may have other things to do,
Yeah,
but you're
and
welcome to
I
stay.
appreciate that. No, I don't wanna stay if it's gonna be reviewed. Because I have a job,
We'll-
another job.
We'll chat
And
about the
so-
work assignments.
Okay,
LP.
thank you,
Try not to
Chairman,
burden
and
everybody.
thank you for what you do for this
And
community.
I'll copy you on who you'll be working
Cool,
with.
thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Patrick, thanks for doing what you do. We kind of talked to you in an odd hack capacity where we haven't formally added you to the committee of 5, but you're okay with the help in the work teams concept?
Happy to lend a hand, yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then some of what they're going to say you didn't hear Friday last week, so. And if I scoot out, it's not to be offensive.
Sure. Yeah, sorry.
Say something new.
Okay, all right, what we're gonna do right now is go through the presentation. I don't know, some of you may have been at the Friday work session. I don't know if you were, but this is the PowerPoint presentation from the work session where we did the overview of the budget. And then there's several others scheduled for later in October 22nd, and November 5th, where the departments will be unleashed and be able to come forward and talk about it. That was a joke.
October 26th, or 22nd.
And November 5th, so. Okay, so if we could, we'll just walk through the presentation. If you have any questions as we go along, just go ahead. We'll make this very informal, okay? All right, so first what we did is, on slide 2, the page numbers are kind of hard to read in the bottom right-hand corner, but this is from the 6-year plan. And here, Liz, here's the first one, I'm sorry.
Patrick, did you get budget books?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Lucinda Mahoney, who's the CFO, she is the one who put together developed the 6-year plan and the assumptions that went into it in terms of some of the indicators. So what she included is just to get a feel for what we can expect in terms of the economy. And, slow, in case some really slow changes upwards. But the forecast from a number of sources suggests that the economy will have a slow, steady recovery. So it's to give some context to what we're looking at. And then on page 3, it was just market volatility in terms of some of our revenues come from investments, from the trust funds, from our cash pools. And so this is just to suggest that the market is volatile, and it adds a question mark to our longer term planning and what revenues we might have from that. And then on page 4, this also is an outlook of what the 6-year plan could be under basically a continuation budget, which means, take the expenses you have today and then increase them over time, and what would those costs be? And for the cost portion of it. And then the bottom wedge is if you assume that property taxes were flat. Okay, it's just a scenario. And then the rest of the assumptions are on the right-hand side. In terms of revenues flat, the assumption is State of Alaska revenue sharing continues at the same level as we have this year. That other program-generated revenues would increase between 1% and 3%. And then on the expense side, it would be, again, that continuation level. Take what you have and increase it by inflation and other factors. So that gives you one snapshot. And then the next slide is the mayor's approach that Jennifer was describing, which is somewhat of a twist from what we laid out last year. And in this case, this is a scenario in which property taxes would increase about 1.5% per year. And pretty much the new revenues of $6 million, the third bullet under revenues, that would be a new consideration. And then otherwise, the rest of the assumptions are pretty similar to the previous scenario. But what it would mean, and you can see on the bottom line, is efficiencies and reductions that would be required in each of those years, which frankly is darn daunting, so.
And the new 6 million came from where?
Well, it's If there's a tobacco tax increase, that's one of the scenarios, that's a possibility, but if it's not that, then it could be something else. But right now, that was sort of what was on the table, it's been introduced to the assembly, and so it's the potential to be out there. Okay, so that's sort of a flavor of context, sort of bookends of possibilities. All right, so now we get into the budget stuff. On slide 6, establishing what the continuation level would be for 2011. And as you can see that in 2010, the approved budget was $421.4 million. And a continuation level budget is about $450 million for an increase of $28.5 million. Two primary drivers for the continuation level budget, the increases, the $16.5 million for salary and benefits, and then $14.6 million increase in debt service. And normally our debt service doesn't go up that much. I mean, normally you expect about a $3 or $4 million increase, and this primarily is voter-approved debt. But in 2010, we had a savings of about $12.5 million by a mechanism called refunding of the debt. And while it helped us because we had that $12 million for the police fire retirement fund, we had to make an extraordinary payment to the police fire retirement fund. It helped us on balance save some money, save $12.5 million, and we had to pay $12 million to the police fire fund. But the downside is that it's really a one-time fix, or we had at that time talked about doing it again this year. But the downside is it's not a recurring savings, so eventually you have to pay the piper. And so we decided to bite the bullet, try to get our debt service up to the customary level. So that's why it's a big step up this year. So the next page is the salary and benefit cost increases. It gives you a 2010, it's by organization or labor union, and then the non-represented execs. And you can see how much is for wages, how much is for benefits. We do have a substantial increase in our health benefit costs. So I think it's about 45% of the increase is attributed to health benefit increases. So anyway, so that's laying out what's contributing to the $16.5 million in the increase for health and wages. Okay, so in terms of revenues, if we had a continuation level revenue budget, if we taxed to the cap, we could generate about $15.5 million. We have, based on continuing our current revenue sources, what we expect them to be in 2011 is about an additional $7 million. But even if we had a tax to the cap scenario, we'd still be about $6 million short in meeting the continuation level budget. So that's and that would require a 7% increase in property taxes. So what our conclusion is, after looking at even the maximum scenario in terms of property taxes, is that we really don't have a revenue problem. Instead, we really have a structural spending problem, and so that's what we're attempting to try to address. The choices and trade-offs that were required or will be required. We looked a lot at took guidance from the community budget dialogues, where some of you participated in that or went to the briefing of the final report. And what came out of that was basically citizens wanted to avoid substantial cuts. They wanted us to first make efficiency gains and then, and only if necessary, increase taxes. And if you have to increase taxes, they don't want us to increase property taxes. And the sort of the subtext to that was that they were open to other taxes. And this certainly served, I think, and Larry, you said it on the meetings too, it was guidance to the mayor, but the reality when you're trying to cut, 14, 15 million from the budget, it more often meant that you didn't cut as much as you otherwise might have in some of the services. So that was sort of when you got down to having to make the decision. So anyway, so that helped as an input and some insight into what citizens' thoughts were. So in terms of the 2011 budget that's in your binder, total of expenditures is $435 million, which actually is almost a $14 million increase in spending, that 13.8 difference column. In terms of the change in revenues in order to pay for that additional spending, property taxes would go up about 1.6%. And about 1% of that is for voter-approved expenditures, and the other 0.6 is more general in nature. In terms of other sources of revenue, a 5.5% increase, and that's things like the federal government's providing us with $1 million subsidy for bond costs. It's called the Build America Bond, so we got $1 million there. Room tax is projected to increase about 1.9 million. And there was a few others that they're smaller in nature, but cumulatively they add up to that 8.6 million. In terms of IGCs, which are intra-governmental charges, a lot of this is charges to grants or to the utilities, things outside general government that brings in some revenues, basically pretty flat. And then program-generated fund balances, these are things like the Heritage Land Bank. It has a fund balance. It has a fund out of which we appropriate to support their activities. Okay, so that's those kinds of fund balance. So all in all, it's a 3.3% increase in the budget.
Sure, I got a question for you. When you guys proposed your revenues, this is probably too complex of a question for you to answer right now, but for example, our last meeting, we got, where the different departments were as far as spending, and then last year's proposed revenues as opposed to what you're actually what you actually received in 2009. So the 2009 proposed and what you actually received. And for example, I saw you guys expected to receive X amount in parking funds, but that didn't nearly meet what was proposed as far as what you guys, what you thought you were going to meet. But what I did see is that proposed bus fares were higher than what you had thought. And so this may not be correlated, but if you're seeing a decrease in parking fines and you're seeing an increase in bus ridership, maybe that's why you're not seeing as much. And I'm just wondering if you guys take that approach to it, saying, okay, well, we're getting more money from the bus system and less money from the parking, so maybe we shouldn't assume that we're going to get as much from parking fines. Is that legit?
Well, what Treasury Department does a really good job of tracking in the current year, how are we doing?
Sure.
The year-to-date collections, and then they also forecast where they think we'll be compared to what we've budgeted. And they contact all the departments, they contact, if it's an external kind of revenue that's influenced by others, they room tax, for example. They contact the hotels to see how business is doing and that kind of thing. So they do a tremendous amount of analysis in the current year to know, so we have a heads up if a revenue's falling short. But are you suggesting that people are riding the bus because they're getting too many tickets?
No, what I'm proposing is that people aren't getting as many tickets because more people are riding the bus. People are saying, well, I'm just going to ride the bus and not drive my car, so that's why you're seeing a reduction.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there's any type of correlation with things like that.
Well,
That's what it said to me.
Well,
Maybe the fines are too high. People are saying, oh, I'm going to ride the bus.
Cheaper to give them free parking.
But
yeah, no, that's an interesting take. I don't think so.
Okay.
If it was a program, if they were two programs in the same department,
Mhm.
maybe they might do that kind of connecting the dots.
Sure.
But that's an interesting twist. Hadn't thought about that.
No. Okay.
Okay, okay, so slide 12 is a picture of what was on the other page. Gives you a little bit more in terms of the percentage of the total revenues required to support the 2011 budget. And you can see that property taxes are 55% of the revenues that pay for general government. Slide 13 goes through some of the reasons why we have some additional revenues and other fund sources, so you can read that.
Cheryl, do I correctly presume there'll be legislation accompanying the aircraft registration?
Yes, in fact, we're gonna have a sort of an omnibus fee bill, and that would be part of it.
Is it 25 a year for those guys?
There's two, depending on how many
One,
propellers.
yeah, single
you
engine is
have.
25 and multi is 5. For a single
75 and
engine?
125?
Yeah, I just got mine.
Okay, yeah, I think it's 75 and 120. 75
Now
you
you get it
have
with this
one
Right.
single engine and 125 for two, and basically our proposal is to double it.
Pay the bill quick.
Yeah.
The things you learn on the budget committee, huh?
My favorite is Andrew Halpro was on the BAC, back when I was on the BAC, and he actually suggested a rental car tax. Imagine my surprise, but
Don't tell my dentist.
Tony, now you won't be
Check,
shocked.
okay?
You know it's
He's
coming, right?
flies in Hastings.
okay. So what does this mean in terms, the next slide, slide 14, impact on taxpayers. Under the tax cap calculation, we could collect $252.5 million. Well, let me back up for a second. You see the two numbers there. One, the 236.7 million, that's like the area-wide fund, the police service area fund, the fire service area fund. But then in addition to those, there's also these smaller service areas. Some of you may actually live in them, especially if you live on the hillside or in Eagle River. And so those are what we call service areas, and those entities set their own mill rates. They vote to approve what the maximum mill rate is. So those tax collections are calculated separately. And so we acknowledge, because we can't do anything about the 15 million. That's determined by service areas and their voting. So, but you add it together, total taxes to be collected is the 252 million. So in terms of where the mayor's proposed budget is, we're about 11.4 million under the tax cap.
How's your communication with those limited road service area chairs or I guess heads of them?
How is it?
Yeah.
The maintenance and operation, what was the maintenance M&O department, they're the ones who work with them directly. So in terms of where we are under the cap, 11.4 million. If you look at FY10, we were 8 million. So for a total of 19.6 million of taxes didn't get paid to the city and stayed in the pocketbooks of citizens. Proposed spending, this is a department chart to give you some sense of the allocation of the budget pie. Our new Public Works Department, or our almost new Public Works Department, the reorg AO is being reconsidered by the Assembly, but interestingly, they become the biggest department. And that's a combination of all the maintenance and operations, the project management and engineering, and the traffic department, so they have been combined. And then police is the second. I know the line's kind of hard to see on the black and white, at 19% with fire, then at 16%. Okay. So in terms of dividing up the budget pie, if you look at police and fire, they equal 40%. Public works, and the base, I know somebody's going to go back and say 16 plus 19, Cheryl, isn't 40. But, right, Patrick? I can see you doing that.
Last time I checked.
Okay. And, but what we did is, the fire and police department also contribute to a trust fund. And so what we did, and it's not really their operating dollars, it kind of distorts their budget because we've had to appropriate additional dollars to them. So we kind of pulled that piece of the pie out, and you can see police and fire trust contribution is 5%. So if you add those three together, that equals the 40. All right. Public Works, Community Development, 32%, Parks, Library, Transit, Health and Human Services, 14%, et cetera. And but what this meant was that we were looking at the kind of size of reductions that we were. It meant that every slice of the pie had to be looked at. We couldn't exclude, for example, public safety. And that was the challenge. With them being 40% of the pie, it meant they couldn't be off the table. Because if we did, that meant the 14, 15 million of cuts had to be out of the other 60%. And that would have been pretty devastating for a lot of programs. So that was the choice that we made. So as a result, all departments participated in the reductions. 110 positions have been deleted, of which 56 are currently vacant. And so just an observation, when you're talking to your department, you might want to just ask them how many of the positions going away are vacant, and just as a point of reference.
Cheryl, do you know if these have, whether they say that they're vacant or not?
No, but
Okay.
I'll show you where where you can learn that in the information in here.
Okay.
Those are the reports that you're going to get are the positions that are budgeted in 2011.
Oh, I got you.
Okay,
Okay.
that's the information.
Cheryl, if I may. Earlier, I think you said you cut about 100 positions last year, is that correct?
about 195.
195, and then another 110 this year. So in effect, we've cut probably 12-15% of the number of employees already.
That's probably about right, because we have about, what, 2,200, 2,400?
Uh,
It's in here
yeah.
too.
It was 20.
2277 was in here, you know.
Okay, yeah. And then some of these 54 though, what we've done is we're charging their costs to a grant. For example, there's 4 of them in Health and Human Services. The state of Alaska has increased the grant amount to the department for public health nursing. And so they're going to shift from taxes to the grant as the fund source. So as a result, they're part of this 54, but it's not like the people are going away.
No.
Okay, and the same thing is on some IT capital projects. And there's about 19 positions that are gonna be charged throughout the department, 19 equivalents, be charged to capital projects. And so as a result, there's still bodies that are working, but they're not being funded by the taxes or program revenues. So it's kind of a,
They're not being funded current salary and benefits. How about retirement, et cetera,
Oh,
et
no,
cetera, down the line?
what it ends up is, in most cases, it's a percentage of their costs is being charged to a capital project because they're gonna be spending part of their time working on that project. So it is their full cost. Yeah. Okay, so that's just a little caveat to
But
full
like,
disclosure.
the
Yes,
number
yes.
of budgeted employees is 2,277 according to the presentation.
Okay.
But I have a question.
Yes.
Aren't most of those positions vacant and/or eliminated through attrition?
Well, there's 50, out of the 110, 56 are currently vacant.
Okay.
And so a lot of that is they became, I should say a lot, I don't know the number, but yes, they became vacant this year and the department made a decision in anticipation of budget reductions that they wouldn't fill it. So that's some of the decision making.
So Larry's not running through the call, you and you out of here?
I won't speak to that.
So that's, excuse me, Cheryl, that's 56 out of 110 for this
Yes.
coming year?
Yes,
Okay, so we're going to have some actual terminations this coming year.
some layoffs, yeah, but then there's bumping. I mean, so then they can move into another position. So you don't know until you get through that process as to what the bottom line number ends up being. Okay, and so in the next slide, slide 18, about the budget details. When we go, I wanted to walk with you through the budget book, just not every page, but just to give you a flavor of what's in there, and that's where we can speak to what's discussed on slide 18, as well as almost just about all of the rest of this, because that's really part of what's in the budget book. And then on the very last page is the work sessions. So you can mark your calendars. So the October 22nd and November 5th are from 11 to 2 p.m., 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the November 19th work session, I believe, is when Mr. Starr would like to have the BAC make their reports. Adam, did he say that to you?
November 19th?
Yeah, November 19th, does that sound right? Yeah, because the November 12th was just a just-in-case work session, so, but we'll confirm that with him.
So what time are those meetings again?
They're 11 to 2.
All of them?
Yeah, no, just, well, the first 2 for certain. Okay. And they do have them, what I'll do is I'll send you guys a schedule, okay? Because they do have them set, the assembly has set the times for them. And then public hearings on the budget, the 3 nights that are mentioned here. Okay, so any questions on that stuff? Okay. Alrighty, and so in terms of your budget books and stuff you got, okay, there's several moving pieces. One is a citizen's guide to the budget. And this does have, it's more narrative in nature, so it gives you some context of why we made some of the decisions we did. And it also includes some of the information that was in the PowerPoint. And this actually is the BAC encouraged updating of a citizen's guide that was done in about 2002. So that's a result of BAC encouragement. You have the municipal utility and enterprise operating capital budgets in one of these books, so that's Merrill Field, AWWU, MLMP, the Port and Solid Waste Services, so that's one of the books. Then another one is the proposed capital improvement budget, the CIP and CIB. The budget is for 1 year and the the program is for 5 years. So that includes state bond, projects proposed for bonds, et cetera. Okay, so now the binder. Okay. So the first thing is the letter from the mayor, which I'm sure you'll all go home and read carefully. Okay, so in the first section, huh?
I'm bored.
You're bored?
I'll read it all.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you were bored now, listen to it. Okay, the first section is the overview. In fact, it's very similar to what you have in the Citizens Guide. And if you go to page 1-13, in that section, I'm just gonna point out some of the additional details if you're interested in sort of zeroing down. Okay, it's by department, and what it shows you is the 2010 budget, the salary and benefit changes, and then all other changes, the total, and then what the continuation level was, the changes we made in 2011 proposed budget, and then the total. And then it gives you a percent change. Okay, it's page 1-13. Okay, so again, just if you want more of a department level. The next one on page 114, because we're having a proposed almost reorg, this actually was, Harriet Drummond had talked about the frustration when you do a reorg, that you lose the information about, like in planning department, you lose what was their 2010 planning department budget because they got moved into community development. And so what this does is it rearranges the boxes so you can have that comparison. So, 115 is a personnel summary by department, and we in our office. Well, never mind, I wasn't going to that. Okay, and then on 1-16 is the tax cap calculation, the preliminary tax cap calculation, which gets confirmed, gets finalized in April. Okay, so that's kind of just some of those charts. Then the 6-year plan, hopefully in the book this time, which is what is it in yours? No? Okay. Okay, well, see, I don't have mine either, so we'll get you one. Yeah. Okay, does yours have the 6-year plan in it, your book? Okay. All
I have
right.
2, who needs one?
Okay, and then the next section is revenues, so you get a sense of all the revenue codes, the different accounts that we have, and then there's detail behind the list that give you, if you want to look up a certain revenue code and see what's the nature of the money that's in there, where does it come from? And then the rest is the departments, and let's pick a good one. Let's pick fire. You'll go to fire department. And so pretty much for every department, you'll have similar kinds of information. Okay, so there's an org chart that's really more an organizational chart, I think, for budgeting than how they operate, but, okay. And then this page 10-2 is a department level summary of the information. So you've got the 5 divisions and the intragovernmental charges, which you talked about earlier, and then program generated revenues, and then expenditures by category, so you see how much personnel costs, supplies, travel. This is on 10-2. And subtotals. This is very much macro. Okay, and then the next page, 10-3, will give you a reconciliation, which takes you what are the changes that happened from 2010 to 2011. Okay, so those are the incremental changes. And then we have our performance frameworks and measures. So for the fire department, they talk about the department level measures here. And then we move into a little bit more detail about each of the departments and the divisions. And this is new. This level of information has not previously been put into the budget book, or at least not for a number of years. So you have at the division level, in this case 10-7, For the administration, you can see again expenditures by categories, the same category, salaries and benefits, travel, contractual, et cetera. Details about the nature of the people funded in that division. So what are the kinds of positions that you have? So you get a flavor of how they do their work. And then on the next page would be the expenditure and revenue detail, as opposed to the summary. And it gives you even a little bit more information. So on your salaries and benefits, you can see how much they spend on straight time, how much on overtime, leave, et cetera. And then it gives you a little bit more detail about their revenues. For example, program-generated revenues, where they, what are the nature of the programs by which they generate the revenues. And it shows you how much they got in that. 2009, the actuals, what was proposed for 2010, how much the budget is for this year, and then what we propose for 2011. Okay, so again, so that's repeated for all of the departments. And then finally, if you go to the very next to the last tab, appendices. Word. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so we had appendices. So these are kind of the, some may think interesting, but this is a lot of the details. But, again, A-1, by expenditure category, how much are they spending by department on, salaries and benefits, supplies, travel, et cetera. This function cost, this is kind of a more, this is at the fund level, and that could be a whole other discussion, which I hope you never have to have. But it talks about all the funds, and this is more from an accounting standpoint, but it gives you a flavor of all the different ways in which we, the funds to which charges are made. And the same thing on B2, this also is more at the fund level, and this is part of the IGC things too. Okay, Appendix C on page C-1. This gives you our benefit rates, so you can see how the percentages, as well as the health benefits costs, which probably,
Percentage of, salary?
Salaries, right.
Okay.
So how much goes for the various requirements, Social Security, PERS.
Really not that bad. I thought it'd be much higher. Past years, we were, in some categories, we're upwards around 40%.
Well, that's because these percentages don't include health care.
Oh.
Then you have to look down. Well, because those are listed below because they vary by organization, so you can see,
Never mind that.
yeah, so you need to add that in there. Yeah. So I think we're up to more like
Fine
50
print has
or-
always escaped me in life.
Well, this isn't
I went to
too-
service,
this
it's
isn't
just,
too fun. Okay, so, and D1 is the health benefit cost sharing summary. And this was in response to questions that we were getting about why were health costs going up so much. And part of it is there's differences in the amount that a union will share in the increased cost. And so this just provides you with that kind of information, so you get a flavor of the differences and when it goes up and the employer has to pay 95% versus the employee 5%, that contributes to the employer's costs.
You said this was self-funded, the city funds this.
Self-insured, we're self-insured,
Self-insured.
yep.
So it's not paying into any of the union trust or anything?
Well, there are a couple that do have trusts. I think it's right, the ones below the other health plans, IBEW Local 71 and 302. I think those are the trusts.
What surprised me is that trusts tend to have a lower cost per
Oh,
employee.
that's why I was
than-
wondering, how could you get any higher?
Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta ask about that, find out why.
Probably a larger pool, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be. And they've done a pretty good job. Who was it last year was the only work group, was it IBW, the only one that didn't have their healthcare costs go up?
That I don't remember. Yeah, last year was kind of a blur to me.
Yeah, but they, well, it's a relatively small group of employees, but they were the only medical or healthcare program we had in the city, so we didn't have increased costs associated with it. They managed to get their costs down somehow. So,
Put them in charge.
On Appendix D on D1, like the IAFF, you go over, it says split of increases over base, meet 0, meet 1, meet 2, meet 3. I understand that's a split between who covers what. What's the reason the city meet 3 benchmark, is that what you're saying?
No, that the individual, that based on meeting benchmarks for one the benchmarks are tied to participation in their peer fitness assessment, percent of prescriptions filled with generic drugs, and percent increase in dental preventative visits. And so when they meet these benchmarks, for example, if you've met 2 of the benchmarks, then the city would pay 93% of the increase, and the employee would pay 7%.
I got you.
So,
So if it's on an individual basis?
yes, per employee.
I got you,
Yep.
okay.
So then, Appendix E is several pages and is a summary of what's called incentive pay. So these are the opportunities for additional, that gets added to your base wages. So different ways in which you add to your base wages. So. And then Appendix F is overtime by department. Which is budgeted, yes.
In the prior meeting I attended, you passed out this summary of wages and benefits, my positioning. Are these incentive pays included, or is this an addition?
They're in there, and some of those call education pay, some of those columns, one was education pay, PIP or PSP, across the, down the side of your summary there.
Okay.
Yes, that's what we call incentive pays, incentive pay.
Okay.
Okay, but yes, that's the nature of these, okay? So F is overtime, G is about debt service, H is the police and fire retirement, that's a kind of they're part of general government, but not really, they sort of operate, they're not part of a department, so we just have separate information in there about them. Then about I is about vacancy factor, J is based on the budget we proposed, what an estimated mill rate is, and then what that would translate into depending on what tax district you live in. And Appendix L and M are the maps of the tax districts. We get those questions. N is the local government profile, and then finally is just the final report from the community dialogues. Some people find it interesting.
They're reading.
They're reading it.
So on the police, this would be section after, I guess it'd be H2. Police and fire retirement. In 2009, you have basically 29 million, and in 2010, it drops down 925,000. What, I guess I don't understand this page. Are you saying that,
That's a darn good question, Adam.
How could it drop that much?
that's a
Yeah.
pretty big drop, and I didn't hear that much screaming.
Yeah, no,
So-
no, that's a good question. Let me find out because that suggests that they budgeted differently in 2009 something. But that's a really good question. Let me find out.
Okay, and then this is the police and fire retirement. Is this just cost for the department itself?
The agency that administers it.
Okay.
Right, they
I
have,
got
Chuck Laird is the executive director, and they have a couple of, well, let's find out. They have 12 staff.
Okay.
So that's kind of it. I just wanted to give you a flavor of the kind of information that's in here, so if you need to find something, you might look or give me a call or send me an email. Bless you.
Good, Cheryl?
That's it.
All right, thank you. Did everybody have a chance to, I have Bill's, I'm sorry. I have Jim and both Jims, which the groups they want to do. And Liz?
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to fill out what you wanted
Yeah.
to look at? Andy?
Yeah, I put my name down on
You put your- Okay.
and if there's others, you can put me wherever else you need.
All right. Oh, by the way, Andy, I put in IT, it was an assumption, so,
Good assumption.
okay. All right. I didn't want to be too presumptuous. All right, what else, is there anything else anybody has any more questions, or? Okay.
I don't have questions, per se. I've got comments whenever you're ready.
Oh, absolutely, go right ahead.
It just seemed to me that there's an elephant in the room with all this stuff since I've been on the committees. And that's the recently negotiated contracts that wind up into 3,000 to 3,700 to, I think's the low, up to 9688 per an employee per year increase, if I'm reading that correctly. And that's staggering. I mean, as a citizen walking in, plus somebody that has negotiated literally dozens of major union contracts in my life, I have never seen that big an increase. And a couple of things that brings to mind, are we gonna let the elephant sit? Is that a dead issue? Or should you reopen it? And everything we've said on budgets always say, look through the future. One thing with unions, assuming you're going to let it set, is we need to notify them as early as possible that in the future, there has to be some give back somewhere, whether it be at the end of the term of this contract or whether we want to reopen the contracts. And I'm not advocating, I think it just needs to be discussed. I mean, you can play all these budget games. You've already cut about 10% of the actual jobs, it sounds like. And that's really admirable. That's a huge cut. And you can keep cutting, and I'm not opposed to that. We can do these reviews. I've done them before, with state government, and we can do them, and they can be very effective. But pretty soon you've cut so much, your programs are so weak that you've got nothing left. I mean, you're paying for nothing. You're just paying for confusion. So I think that has to be addressed. And the other thing is, I'm just surprised the public hasn't picked up on it. That I read I do read all this, and I've read all those public comments, and I was surprised that this didn't surface. I'm not sure they understand what the magnitude of the problem is. I know what I gave my employees last year, and, it wasn't in this category, I can assure you, and I don't know if any business that did. So I'd let that one lie. I think that, we need to discuss it. That's a huge elephant out there. And somewhere, what are we, or the administration, or the assembly, or who's gonna do what? I mean, are we gonna say this is it? Let's go forward from this basis without any regard to changing these numbers, or not?
Well, first, in our 6-year plan, we had to include the projected increases because it is the
absolutely.
contract. But the mayor is starting to meet next week. The offers have been extended, come forward with suggested how we could make some changes, and he is going to be meeting with the union starting next week individually to talk about what's possible, so.
All right.
Is there-
This,
Is there a possibility of contract reopen?
I don't know, that's, do you want to, I don't know about reopen, I think those are technical, those are legal things, but I think the meet and confer, there's other ways in which you can have discussion.
This is kind of the initial stage, reaching out to the bargaining units, because, and you're right, Bill, because what you get to here is after almost 300 reduced positions in 2 years, and like I said, my opening comments, of another 100 next year, pretty quickly get to the point that you can't provide services. So I think that what the mayor is attempting to do is to meet independently first and we've extended the invitations to the various bargaining units, to their leadership, to come in and sit down and say, well, this is what's on the horizon. Now and if they say, well, we can see the horizon also, then we have in the contracts a clause that says meet and confer. But they have to voluntarily, and so we'll do our best to present the financial side and looking forward to the 6-year plan, because if that were available, and if they have confidence in the financial numbers, then in fact, a corrective action, for example, our CFO ran a number, if there were, for example, a 2-year wage freeze, just take that one piece, that would correct the ship immediately. And there would be no, for the next 6 years, we'd be on a level play. There's other options available, that you could pick, like the PIP. If they would, in order to preserve those jobs, to deliver services to the community. So that, it's kind of we've opened the door, and we're gonna ask, and all we could do is ask, because the alternative isn't very pretty.
I understand that. Been there, done that too.
Yeah.
Another part, we talked about privatization or whatever, PIP, whatever you call it, last meeting. And I got some documents and I looked at some other stuff I researched, and it appears to me there's not gonna be any of that until we address contracts. That the contracts pretty well avoid at least the majority of any effort we might make to do that, which is not untypical for a governmental agency.
Well, there are some creative ways that we're looking at and exploring. And one that you'll hear quite a bit about, those of you that have IT under your purview, we are looking at consolidation of a lot of accounting functions and through additional technology. Tomorrow night, for example, on the Assembly agenda is a $437,000 appropriation to convert the municipality to electronic time cards. We're now spending $2.2 million annually to process payroll. And the rest of the industry and the rest of governments, most everybody has gone to electronic time cards. We've done time and motion studies on 350 employees, and in fact know that there are savings that we will get a return on investment in about 6 months for that invested capital, and it's all. So there are still some things that we can do, Bill, but you're right. The big elephant in the room is the contracts, but that doesn't, even 2 million here and 2 million there, that still doesn't get us there.
No, it doesn't.
You just,
You're dealing with big numbers.
but these are big numbers.
And Bill, on the issue of contracting out, and we are looking at, innovative ways by which, alternate ways of delivering services. So,
Yeah.
but the contracts are huge roadblocks. So, but we're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
looking
but
at it.
One thing with that, just from experience here, is, if you're gonna ever break that roadblock, we need to be notifying them well in advance for a major change. I mean, that is legal, and I think your attorney would back that and everything, that you put them on notice now. But it might be that, and I think the sooner that happened, the better, because that will become part, if you would reopen, of the bargaining process, to maybe back away from that if we give here. So, I'd say we ought to be, because those strategies could result in a bigger solution than anything we're gonna do by committee. Good. I had one other point and I forgot it, so that's,
Anybody else? All right. What I'll do is I'll put this together, and if we're missing any departments, I'll send out an email and ask if anybody wants to take a, like, for example, library. I don't see anybody wants to do library, which is, it's hard to imagine, but we'll probably end up having to assign some. And if say, for example, 6 people want to do police, then I'll have to adjust it. But I'll openly communicate that with you. And then I'm gonna have, at some point in time, have to give people these folders for the departments they want to go. And then we'll have to coordinate as far as timing. Jim, you're out the 7th through the 17th, so whichever are you okay with not being at all your meetings if say 2 of the people can meet but you can't, or do you want to be at all?
well, I'd like to participate, sure.
Sure, okay. Then we'll schedule around that. And then let's make a concerted effort to get this done by November 3rd and have something to bring back at the next meeting. So the next meeting is November 3rd and then December 1st. Anything else?
Just my suggestion, we might want a work session in between there to get this thing kicked off. Say in a week, we could meet for 30 minutes even.
Can we do that?
Assign the teams and kind of get our marching orders together.
Okay, that's fine.
How we're gonna
Jim,
approach
well,
them.
Jim will be gone from the 7th to 17th, so you want to do it after the 17th? That's a lot of time to waste, actually, it's 10 days.
Can
So
I-
go ahead, and I'll go along with whatever.
We need a lot of
Okay.
emails here.
Adam, are you gonna come up with the suggested questions for everybody to ask? I mean, it might be helpful,
to.
I'm just.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
I
your
think
process, but it's not mine, but.
No, absolutely, and the goal of the last meeting was to have some questions, everybody write down some questions to ask. So I don't know if people had done that or not, I know Heather had, and I had some questions too. But,
A good place to start might be the list of questions that we used in the transition team. I mean, it seems like a similar exercise where you're going in and you're evaluating a department and.
I like to review each individual budget that I've signed up for before I come up with
Questions.
particular questions or specific questions. I mean, I've got some general ones, but I'd like to have at least through the weekend, and I'm in Phoenix till Wednesday, get back Wednesday night. So I don't need any time after that, but that'll give me an opportunity to read this and formulate some specific questions if
Okay.
I have any.
does the 14th work for everybody? 11:30 on the 14th?
What day of the week is that?
That's a Thursday.
Sure.
My wife's due on the 13th, so,
Oh.
but I can work it, guys.
Hold it.
So let's just do Thursday, 11:30, which room can we get?
Want to
Down
do Friday the 15th?
Friday the 15th? Does that work for everybody?
Think I got a problem, but I don't know what it is offhand. I don't do fancy phones.
It's not in the budget.
Yeah, I could I'll see if I can make that, yeah.
Okay, so let's do Friday.
I mean, Thursday would be fine. Can't people, participate telephonically? I mean, is that,
Yeah, that's fine. That's what
people-
Heather did today. Does that work for you?
That may be better, but yeah, so let's stick with Thursday then.
Thursday, 11:30, downstairs, room 155. Is that open at
I
that
don't know,
time?
we'll have to find out.
Okay.
We'll find a room. This is government. We're here to help you.
You can
That's a
also-
scary statement.
Also, OMB's conference room, you're welcome to use that too,
Okay.
all right, as an option, so.
I've got a big conference room, my office downtown, if it's midtown, if it's easier, if you can't find something, we'll
Okay.
figure that out.
We'll set it for downstairs, room 155. If that doesn't work, the meeting room on OMB, and then if that doesn't work, which probably will, we'll just meet at Tony's. But I'll send out an email about the dates, and that's it. Anything else?
Just one last thing.
Sure.
I'm gonna also email to you the actual ordinance that's going to be introduced on next Tuesday. And attached to it is this summary that has the vacant and filled position information. So I know it makes your eyes cross now, but two of the columns say, is the position vacant or filled? And this is what I was referring to.
What section was that on?
It's not in your book right now. It's the ordinance that's gonna be introduced on Tuesday.
Okay.
But I'll send it to you. It just won't have so
Okay.
it just hasn't been formally introduced yet. But it'll have additional, again, it's the line-by-line changes that are summarized,
Sounds good.
okay?
All right, so I'll put this together, and then I'll have to meet up with you guys individually today, or people that are in groups, and hopefully, if you guys could just write down your phone numbers and just leave them where you guys are at. I know I have Tony's, I have Andy's, Liz, I don't think I have yours, Bill.
I can send you a sheet that's got everybody's contact information.
Okay, yeah, just do that, and then I'll give you guys a call, and we'll get this, move to adjourn.
Cheryl's
Thanks.
ordinance.